homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta. Now we shall continue our study of the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch. Zhicheng stood before the Sixth Patriarch, sharing his final realizations regarding the threefold training of discipline, meditation, and wisdom, and confirming his own enlightenment. The Master approved of this. The Master recognized him, perceiving his inner state. The Master further said to Cheng, "Your Master's discipline, meditation, and wisdom are for advising those of lesser capacity. My discipline, meditation, and wisdom are for advising those of great capacity. If one awakens to their self-nature, one does not establish Bodhi or Nirvana, nor the knowledge and vision of liberation." Here, the Sixth Patriarch continues his instruction to Zhicheng. The threefold training of discipline, meditation, and wisdom passed down by your Master is actually intended for those of lesser spiritual capacity. Refrain from all evil, practice all good, and purify your own mind. If these represent the three trainings, it corresponds to the capacity of beings during the Buddha's first turning of the wheel of Dharma. They understand these trainings only from one specific level, namely through the simple instruction to avoid evil and do good. This is suitable for the Shravakayana or those with relatively modest capacity, just like most people today. Usually when people first encounter Buddhism, they think, oh, it's about doing good and stopping bad deeds. This perspective is widely accepted. It is for advising those of lesser capacity to practice. My three trainings are for advising those of great capacity. The Patriarch's own explanation is sustained by non-referential emptiness, or even deeper, by the luminosity. Ordinary people with lesser capacity find this difficult to accept. Only those with the unique capacity for Chan can understand this. Thus, my method of explaining discipline, meditation, and wisdom is for those of great capacity. In fact, as we study the Platform Sutra, we find it articulates the truths of the Mahayana and Tantric teachings exceptionally well. When you consider that the Sixth Patriarch was a great Mahasiddha who was actually illiterate, the depth of the Shastras he spoke is truly astonishing, as you can surely see. Many people today hold impressive academic degrees, but they may only be skimming the surface of the words. In terms of genuine inner realization and the profound depth of Buddhist doctrine, they certainly cannot compare to him. If one awakens to their self-nature, if you truly realize the nature of all phenomena, then within that realization, the fruits of Bodhi and Nirvana cannot be established. There is nothing to refute or establish. If the result itself cannot be established, then the right view of liberation that leads to it, such as the selflessness of persons and phenomena, or the reasoning and practices used for emptiness, none of these can be found either, because the result itself cannot be grasped. Within our self-nature, everything is fully present. At this very moment, if the fruition of Bodhi is already perfect, how could there be a separate right view used to define it? There is none. When not a single phenomenon can be grasped, only then can all phenomena be established. If one understands this meaning, it is called the Buddha body, also called Bodhi and Nirvana, and also the knowledge and experience of liberation, whether through analytical investigation or through direct awakening. If one has attained the non-referential state of prajna, where nothing is to be gained, then at that point all phenomena can be established. Within the relative truth, all illusory phenomena can be perceived, just as taught in the middle way. Within emptiness, all kinds of manifestations appear. If you can understand this meaning, it can be called the Buddha body or the ultimate truth. It is also termed Bodhi, Nirvana, or the knowledge and experience of liberation. Mipham Rinpoche also explained this in his other Shastras. Terms like Tathagatagarbha, luminosity, the union of clarity and emptiness, great bliss, or the indestructible essence drop, they all point to the same reality. Different sutras and tantras simply use different names. One who sees their nature is free to establish things or not. Coming and going at will, they are without stasis or obstruction. They act as needed and respond, seeing transformation bodies everywhere without leaving the self-nature. This is to attain sovereign supernormal powers and the samadhi of play. This is called seeing the nature. What is seeing the nature? In Chan, we often say, seeing the mind and seeing the nature. But for one who has truly seen the nature, there is nothing to be gained in their view, practice, or conduct. Establishing is unattainable, and not establishing is also unattainable. Neither exists for them. As taught in The Beacon of Certainty, both refutation and establishment must be transcended. In the ultimate truth, they do not exist. There is no establishing or refuting, and even coming and going are just as they are. For instance, in our lives, it is like the sun and moon not staying in the sky. For a bodhisattva who has attained this realization, life and death, coming and going, all are free. Within the 6 realms of samsara, they come and go without any stasis or hindrance. They act according to circumstances with perfect ease, quite unlike us worldly people. Worldly people have no freedom in their coming and going. For many people in the world today, when they find themselves unable to push their work forward, they become extremely worried and deeply attached. At a certain point, they feel utterly helpless toward life. When they finally reach a dead end, they might jump off a skyscraper. Many young people do this, as do college students and leaders. So, for people nowadays, skyscrapers have become the best way to reach the Pure Land. But in truth, those who have truly attained the seeing of nature act according to conditions. As we say in Buddhism, they act with perfect ease and without attachment. For example, if what I do today succeeds, he is full of joy. Even if it does not succeed, he will not faint or fall into agonized suffering and despair. A bodhisattva would never take their own life just because a project failed. That should not happen. A bodhisattva wouldn't take their own life, right? If they did, they certainly wouldn't be a bodhisattva. Only ordinary beings do that. Whether a bodhisattva might appear to do so, I do not know, but in the biographies of the Buddha it seems this has never occurred. He responds as required. For any question, perhaps some of us ordinary people, when asked or interviewed, feel extremely uneasy and unfree, feeling that whatever we say is wrong, worrying about making mistakes. This is because self-grasping is causing trouble. Without self-grasping and such obstructions, then whatever is said for a bodhisattva, all the suffering, joy, and appearances in the world are met with total ease and freedom, seeing transformation bodies everywhere without leaving the self-nature. In this world, they will manifest in all kinds of transformation bodies. Just as waves never leave the ocean, they never leave the self-nature, attaining sovereign supernormal powers. All 5 powers and the final exhaustion of outflows are perfectly free. Furthermore, everything in the world is like the samadhi of play. Having no attachment to the world, not treating it as if it were real, like playing a game, everything is just a playful phenomenon. This is the state of one who has truly seen the nature. Many people today consider themselves to have seen the nature, but when they encounter difficulties and face actual afflictions, when those afflictions arise, they may not truly be one who has seen the nature. There was once someone at our academy, a fellow townsman, who came to me one day to pour out his heart. He was weeping over things happening at home and his conflicts with enemies. A Khenpo by my side, who was in good health at the time, listened for a while and then said, "Oh, these poor worldly people, how can they be so attached?" So pitiable, so pitiable. Later, when his own heart wasn't well and he felt a bit down, I said to another Khenpo, "Oh, this Khenpo is so attached, how pitiable." Eventually, he also appeared to break down in tears. So, sometimes when we look at others, we might think, "Oh, these worldly people are so pitiable. They are so incredibly attached to things they shouldn't be attached to." As long as we haven't encountered pain or heartbreak ourselves, I might look at others and think their practice is poor or lacks realization. Why would they cry like that? Why so much attachment? But once the problem falls on our own heads, if we lack a certain level of realization, we might do the same. Even when playing a game, one might take it as real, crying and feeling heartbroken. All sorts of emotions will arise. Therefore, we should see where our practice truly stands. When happy, everyone can talk about how a practitioner should act. But when you are in real pain, especially when facing something very unpleasant or frustrating, let's see if you can remain calm and truly steady. At that moment, you have to rely on your own realization. So, regarding seeing the nature, we shouldn't talk big. Nowadays, some people believe they have already seen the nature, going around saying, I have understood this and that. But one must observe oneself repeatedly. Some may have indeed seen the nature of their own mind. They will continue to accumulate merit until the end of their lives, but they have gained certainty that they will not fall into the lower realms. Zhicheng further asked the master, what is the meaning of not establishing? Wasn't it said earlier, one who sees the nature is free to establish or not? If both are attained, what exactly is the meaning of not establishing? The master said, self-nature is without error, without delusion, and without disturbance. Prajna contemplates in every thought, always free from appearances, one is perfectly free. Attaining everything in all directions, what is there to establish? Self-nature is self-awakened. Sudden awakening and sudden cultivation have no gradual stages, so one does not establish any Dharma. All Dharmas are in quiescence. What sequence could there be? What does it mean by not establishing here? It means that the self-nature is originally non-existent. The nature of the mind and all phenomena is fundamentally without error. There is no impurity or fault. These do not exist. This corresponds to discipline within the three trainings. Without delusion, the self-nature has no ignorance or delusion. This is wisdom. Without disturbance, the self-nature has no distraction or agitation. This is meditation within the three trainings. If the self-nature is without the opposites of discipline, meditation, and wisdom, then every thought is in the realm of prajna, the union of luminosity and emptiness. Always free from appearances, perfectly free, constantly remote from all conditioned forms. Perfectly free, attaining everything in all directions, within such a state, coming and going, life and death, all are perfectly free. All suffering and joy are harmless and beneficial to them. They are free. All dimensions, whether vertical or horizontal, can be attained. White or black, up or down, front or back. For us ordinary people, keeping vertical and horizontal perfectly balanced is very difficult. Big and small cannot be made equal, and up and down are hard to balance. Many things we perceive as unfair, unbalanced, or unequal. All the causes of unhappiness exist because we haven't recognized our mind's nature. Once you truly recognize the nature of the mind, where could there be any inequality? Everything is equal. This equality isn't just something seen with the eyes or some kind of superficial equality in the mind. I have already attained the state of genuine equality. At that point, what is there left to establish? What we call establishing is all done with discursive thoughts. In fact, many Chan principles, when supported by the view of the treasury of the Dharmadhatu or the treasury of the natural state, I find Chan to be the best method of explanation. Without great perfection teachings to explain certain Chan terms, they might be quite difficult to grasp. So even though I do not have the oral transmission for the Platform Sutra, I feel that the view of the Nyingma school's great perfection and Chan coincide perfectly in many places. They share very compatible meanings. Self-nature is self-awakened. This can be a sudden awakening in a single thought. When you look inward, you can suddenly awaken. At that moment, all cultivation is naturally perfected. In this state, there are no so-called preliminary, main, or concluding practices, no generation or completion stages, no analytical meditation via logic or the middle way. None of these are needed for those of truly sharp capacity. Not just in Chan or Tantra, even a sharp student of the Prasangika Madhyamaka can dispel all appearances in the present moment. When all false appearances are dispelled, nothing is established. All dharmas are in quiescence. What sequence could there be? In the true nature, just like the root stanzas of the middle way defines all phenomena, it is direct cutting. Within original purity, it is cut through instantly. In this, no gradual methods are required. Of course, people of such capacity are not the majority. They might be hard to find. But do they exist? Certainly, and in great numbers. Those with the capacity for Chan are also quite numerous. They don't need winding paths. They have the ability to climb straight to the summit. Ascending by a direct route is entirely possible. Why do many people now, especially Westerners, have such great faith in the direct cutting of great perfection? It's just that some teachers might skip the preliminary processes. If the foundation hasn't been heard and instructions are given directly, it seems the results are not very good, but there are many who realize it through their own faith. The same is true for Chan. In this state, there are no stages. This is exactly why Chan has no gradual stages. This is also the unique characteristic of the Sixth Patriarch. Zhicheng bowed and wished to serve as an attendant, tireless day and night. Zhicheng began to prostrate to him and vowed to be his attendant for life. He was originally sent by his master to receive the Dharma, but then he wouldn't leave. He remained tireless day and night, and he was a very diligent attendant, not a lazy one. Some masters are very active, while their attendants are particularly lazy. Every day the master has to wake him up. Get up, hurry up. No, I need to sleep a bit longer. I wasn't feeling well last night, let me sleep more. Can I sleep for 2 more hours? It shouldn't be like that. Of course, masters manifest differently. In fact, when Shengxiu sent him, it wasn't necessarily because Shengxiu needed an oral transmission from the Sixth Patriarch. By using this method, Zhicheng might have been willing to go. Otherwise, he might not have gone. So the purpose of sending him wasn't necessarily for Shengxiu's own gain. If it meant receiving a transmission through someone else, I don't think Master Shengxiu would have wanted or needed that. He sent him to the Sixth Patriarch's place in order to liberate him. That was one account. What follows is about another person. This story is also quite interesting. The monk Zhicheng was from Jiangxi. His lay name was Xingchang. In his youth, he was a knight-errant. When he was young, he was a knight-errant, the kind of person who defends justice. He essentially protected certain people. There are many such accounts in history and novels. To protect officials or monks, he wouldn't hesitate to give his all. He was someone who devoted himself entirely to meaningful work. Since the split into North and South, the two masters were without personal rivalry, yet their followers vied in attachment and devotion. Ever since the southern and northern schools split into these two great branches, in terms of Chan doctrine, they have become the southern and northern schools. They became two major lineages. One is the lineage of gradual stages, and the other is for sudden awakening. Between these two masters, there was no personal competition or conflict between them, yet their followers vied. It was their disciples and followers who compared themselves and competed, giving rise to attachment and aversion. Since ancient times, many great masters from various lineages actually had no conflicts at all. However, those below who did not understand the Buddha's secret intent had many differences and incessant disputes, leading to many unpleasant incidents. Many lineage heads and masters share the same enlightened intent. There is no contradiction in their realization. But as I mentioned a few days ago, many followers privately fail to understand the secret intent of the masters and the schools. They end up arguing with vast differences. Such conflicts and disputes might be excusable for worldly people, but we hope that for general Buddhist practitioners, they shouldn't spend a lot of time pointing out faults just for the sake of their own teacher or school. That is unreasonable. We should instead devote a great deal of energy and time to our own hearing, contemplation, and practice. This is a very important matter in this brief human life. Furthermore, we should use much of our effort and time to share the wish-fulfilling jewel of Dharma and its nectar with destined beings. This is where we should focus our efforts. If we are to speak or act, most of our time should be spent here. But sadly, in this age of decadence, this is especially true in big cities where Buddhism is not very prominent. There are very few people who wish to discuss, debate, or truly understand Buddhist education. Instead, for their own personal gain, some treat Buddhism as a product to be bought and sold. Some treat Buddhism as a luxury item, and some, particularly the teachers who propagate the Dharma, treat it as if it were their own private property. Then all sorts of disputes and divisions begin to arise. This is very unfortunate. The Buddha already spoke about these kinds of disagreements in the sutras. Idle talk and places of dispute give rise to many afflictions. The wise should stay far away, keeping a distance of 100 yojanas. Therefore, when there is idle talk and conflict, true practitioners will not stay there. As a wise person, one should stay far away. Away from what? For example, if there are arguments and conflicts in a city between masters or between masters and their students, it is best if you do not get involved. You must distance yourself. Stay more than 100 yojanas away so you can't even hear the disputes. This is very sensible advice. So we should also, in all aspects of our lives, prioritize harmony unless there is a special reason to do otherwise. Otherwise, in this current degenerate age, every teacher has their own so-called practice place, center, or monastery. They then categorize students as my students or his students. The students also end up arguing, creating so much gossip and judgment. The Dharma that should be spread isn't, while useless gossip is spread everywhere. Of course, there might be individual masters who manifest actual afflictions, whether real or for appearances. But as stated here, the primary point is that the leaders of the lineages themselves have no rivalry with one another. It is the followers below who start to harbor attachment and aversion. At that time, followers of the northern school established Master Shengshu as the Sixth Patriarch. Resenting that the transmission of the robe was known, they sent Xingchang to assassinate him. The master, with his power of knowing others' minds, placed 10 ounces of gold by his seat. At this time, it is said that the followers of the northern school regarded Master Shengshu as the Sixth Patriarch. Even though he did not receive the transmission of the robe and bowl, given his immense prestige, his many followers, and his various abilities, he was certainly worthy of being a Chan Patriarch. However, many disciples became overly zealous in their praise. This is not quite appropriate. In the future, whatever path we follow when praising our own master, we should avoid exaggeration and not claim things we haven't actually witnessed. Do not attribute fictional stories to your teacher. You see an eagle flying and say, "Oh, my teacher is also flying around in his robes." You see a tiger leap and say, "My teacher also leaps with great power, jumping from one side of the mountain to the other." If you attribute these kinds of tales to your teacher when they do not possess such powers, it actually harms their enlightened activity. At that time, Master Shengshu's disciples regarded him as the Sixth Patriarch. They resented any talk of the robe being passed to another, since the Fifth Patriarch had passed the robe to Huineng. They were terrified that the whole world would find out about this. Eventually, they specifically instructed Xingchang to assassinate the Sixth Patriarch. The Sixth Patriarch possessed the power of knowing others' minds. Whether it was purely through his clairvoyance, or because the situation was so complex, various factors might have played a part. Perhaps he truly knew their minds, or perhaps he was simply prepared at all times. He likely sensed that things were becoming dangerous, and the omens were not good. Predicting that this would happen sooner or later, he prepared 10 ounces of gold and kept it by his seat. He was waiting and ready for whatever was to come. In the darkness of night, Xingchang entered the master's room and was about to harm him. The master stretched out his neck for the blow. Xingchang struck 3 times without effect. One night, Xingchang entered the Sixth Patriarch's room with the intent to harm and kill him. The Sixth Patriarch was indeed a great accomplished one. He stretched out his neck for the strike, bringing himself close to the blade. Xingchang swung his sword and struck 3 times, but not the slightest harm was done. Just like Arya Nagarjuna in the past, when the son of King Surabhipadra tried to behead him with a sword. Nagarjuna said, "The karmic debt from my past acts of killing with a blade is already purified. This blade will not work. If you truly wish to kill me, it must be through the karma of killing an insect with a blade of grass, which remains unpurified. Therefore, if you use a blade of kusha grass, my head may be severed." Despite how he swung the sword, no injury could be inflicted. The master said, "The righteous sword is not evil. The evil sword is not righteous. I only owe you gold. I do not owe you my life." He said, "The righteous sword is not evil." Since the man was attacking him, the master used the sword as a metaphor. The righteous cannot be made evil, and the evil cannot be made righteous. In reality, truth is forever pure. An evil sword cannot destroy a truly great and virtuous one. Purity cannot be defiled, and defilement cannot become pure. There might be two different ways to interpret this. I looked at the explanations given by past masters, and most of them do not elaborate on this specific point. Because the Sixth Patriarch was the true successor, they wanted to eliminate the true heir by using a sword, replacing him with Master Shengxiu as the Sixth Patriarch. But in truth, the righteous sword can never be made evil, and an evil sword can never become righteous. For instance, it was unrealistic to establish Master Shengxiu as the Sixth Patriarch. The Sixth Patriarch had his own karmic connection to liberate beings. This cannot be undone by a blade. There are likely many profound meanings within this. The Sixth Patriarch said, "I only owe you a debt of money. I owe you gold, but I do not owe you my life. I did not owe you that in my past lives either." It's possible that in a previous life Xingchang was owed money by him and the debt needed to be repaid. But as for a life debt, there was none between the Sixth Patriarch and him. So, on one hand, the sword could not harm him. On the other hand, the Patriarch eventually sent him away with the gold. Xingchang fell in a swoon and did not revive for a long while. Xingchang was terrified because he had failed to cut the Patriarch down. Overcome with panic, he collapsed to the ground. It took a long time for him to wake up. When he finally did, he begged for mercy and repentance, wishing to become a monk. Upon regaining consciousness, he began to repent. He said, "I wish to become a monk under your guidance." What kind of person comes to kill a master and then wants to be a monk? The master gave him the gold and said, "Leave for now, lest my disciples harm you. You may return another day in disguise, and I will accept you." The master was truly compassionate. Here was someone who had tried to behead him, striking 3 times unsuccessfully, and yet he wanted to become a monk. The master gave him all 10 ounces of gold. He'd made a fortune. Then he said, "You must leave for the time being, because I worry that my disciples here, who love me dearly, will surely kill you if they find out what happened. You failed to cut me down, but your own head might be in danger. It would be much easier for a sword to cut your own head. Leave for now and return another day in disguise." In disguise means changing your appearance. Right now you are a layman, a sword-wielding killer from the underworld. In the future, become a kind-hearted monk with a shaven head and a kashaya. If you come back like that, I will accept you as my disciple. The compassion of the Sixth Patriarch is something we should really reflect upon. I was thinking about this just before I came here. Imagine if someone tried to kill me and then changed their mind and wanted to be a monk. What would my reaction be? It would certainly not be good. Many of you would likely react just like me. So we are still quite far from the level of the Sixth Patriarch. That is what he said at the time. Xingchang obeyed and fled into the night. Later, he joined the order and was diligent. Following the instructions, Xingchang left that very night. He went to another community of monks, shaved his head, and took the monastic form. He kept the precepts and practiced very seriously. Sometimes people play many different roles. One moment he's a would-be assassin. When that fails, he runs to a monastery, joins the order, and keeps the pure precepts. Later, he became a realized, enlightened being. Even if you had committed sins in the past before learning Buddhism, if you repent sincerely within the Dharma, there will be a day of purification. This is also a form of guidance for us. One day, remembering the Master's words, he came from afar to pay homage. One day, the same Xingchang recalled the Sixth Patriarch's words. He remembered the instruction to leave for now and return later in disguise. He traveled from far away to the Patriarch's place and performed prostrations. The Master said, "I have long thought of you. Why do you come so late?" The Master said, "I have missed you and thought of you for a long time." "Why have you come so late? I've been waiting a while." The Sixth Patriarch was quite something, wasn't he? He said, "Before you forgave my crime. Now, though I lead a life of austerity, it is hard to repay your virtue except by spreading the Dharma." Xingchang, now a monk, I'm not sure what his Dharma name was, he said, "I acted so outrageously toward you in the past. You forgave me. You let the crime go. I am so grateful to you. Today I have taken the form of a monk. As you requested, I have returned to you as a monastic. But no matter how hard I practice, it is difficult to repay your kindness." Due to ignorance and folly, he had initially tried to kill him, but after learning some Buddhist principles, he felt the Master's kindness was immense. The only way I can repay your kindness now is to spread the Dharma and liberate beings. This is the only way. Xingchang had a very high level of spiritual aptitude. When our Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche met Mifam Rinpoche, he also said, "The only way to truly repay a master's kindness is through teaching and liberating beings." In fact, for those of us following behind, each of us may have different masters. To repay their kindness solely through money, wealth, or physical service, to be honest, that may not be enough. Of course, some contribute greatly to their master's altruistic activities. This is also one of the greatest ways to repay a master's kindness. As he said here, except by spreading the Dharma and liberating beings. The most important thing right now, he was deeply grateful to the Sixth Patriarch, who had not given up on him. The Patriarch had permitted and accepted him, allowing him to come back. But it was still dangerous if the other disciples found out, because his previous behavior was truly terrifying. We should also have this kind of mindset in the future. In another commentary on the Platform Sutra, scriptural authority is also cited. If one does not spread the Dharma to benefit beings, one can never repay the debt. Without spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings, there is no way to repay the kindness of the Buddha and the Masters. In the later part of my song, Missing the Master, it mainly reflects some of my inner thoughts. Since the Master is no longer physically present, there is simply no way to repay him now. In my life, although there have been many benefactors, among them all, it is the kindness of the Master's teachings that has value life after life. Other things like knowledge or wealth last only for a few short decades. Therefore, this is a realization from the heart, a call from within. In our daily lives, if we can benefit others through the Buddha's teachings, it is far more significant for them. Other things like money or status are secondary. When people are deeply grieving, a few words of comfort can mean the world. They might say, "That was so incredibly helpful. He comforted me during my darkest hour." But that is just a temporary painkiller. True benefit lies in using the Dharma to help others. That is what's essential. As the Lalitavastara Sutra states, spreading the Buddhist scriptures brings the greatest benefit to the world. Recipients receive great blessings, nourishing all of life. Those who receive these teachings gain the greatest possible benefit, not just a fleeting moment of happiness, but a nourishment that sustains all life forever. So, throughout our remaining years, each person's capacity and circumstances will vary. Some truly have the vast conditions to propagate the Dharma and benefit many. Others might not, but generally speaking, it is still highly necessary to benefit even one person, even for a brief moment in our lives. If we're on a bus and the person sitting next to us has no faith in Buddhism, we could ask them to chant Om Mani Padme Hum. That's one way to guide others, but it requires skillful means. We can't just pressure everyone we see into studying Buddhism. Some people are like, "Hey, you study Buddhism, you too." Pulling and dragging people in like that is wrong. There needs to be a proper way. Otherwise, it reflects poorly on Buddhists if we're too pushy. Some might think personal practice and study are the only things that matter. Of course they are important, but what is even more critical, as I often tell our volunteers here, is that we are living in a unique era. In this age of high technology and information, if Mahayana practitioners only care about their own individual practice, many opportunities will be lost. The chances to protect the Dharma and benefit others are everywhere. Today, through the internet or a computer, with just a flick of your finger, thousands of people can benefit from the Dharma. I believe this kind of reach was impossible throughout countless past eras and millions of kalpas. We live in a very special, illusory world now. In this world, using the Dharma to benefit others can, in a sense, transcend the merits of solitary practice. As the Sutra on the 10 Wheels of Ksitigarbha mentions, though a wise one practices meditation for 1 billion kalpas, the realization gained is not as great as protecting my Dharma. The wisdom and merit generated from such practice don't compare to protecting the Dharma even for a short time. Shakyamuni Buddha said, Regarding this teaching of mine, protecting, propagating, or sharing it is an exceptionally good skillful means today. Sometimes I feel that the volunteers around me work incredibly hard, but then I think if we can benefit sentient beings, their hard work is worth it, and my hard work is worth it. When I look back at some DVDs and Dharma books from 5 or 6 years ago, I'm amazed at their enduring value. Because no matter what, they contain the pure Dharma. If confused beings could come to know these teachings, it would transform their minds and their lives. To me, that is the core value of having a human life. People often talk about the core value of life, but what does it really mean? Did we come into this world just to eat? Not necessarily. If we live only to eat, we are not much different from a beggar. It's just that we are attached to a higher standard of living. Our goals differ, but the suffering is essentially the same. For instance, a beggar worries deeply about his next meal. If a wealthy person also lives only for that meal, then we have the same aspirations as a beggar. Therefore, we need a genuine spirit of altruism. I hope everyone realizes that while life is finite, we can use this finite life to do infinite things. We might not be great people, but through a great heart of altruism, even the smallest, most insignificant act becomes as vast as the activities of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, simply because it was driven by that altruistic intention. When you eventually leave this world, some might feel, I came here, but I didn't accomplish anything. They will feel discouraged and sad as they pass away. However, if we truly benefited even a few beings, then even if you haven't achieved some massive feat, your life was actually meaningful. This is my belief. I hope that in the future, everyone's sense of value won't just be lip service, but will be demonstrated through action. This is very important. Otherwise, as practitioners, we might talk beautifully every day. Some people do exactly that, but when it comes to acting, they do nothing and discourage others from acting too. Opportunities are often fleeting. They appear only for a moment. If you don't grasp them, they're gone. For several years, I've worked to support underprivileged students. Although it's tiring, I approach it with great enthusiasm every year. I think if I didn't do this, I might never have another chance to help these people. So each of us must seize our own opportunities to be altruistic. If you miss the chance, it may never come again. He then asked, how can I repay the Master's kindness? By teaching the Dharma and benefiting others. The disciple said, I often read the Nirvana Sutra, but I do not yet understand the meaning of permanence and impermanence. I beg for the Master's compassion to briefly explain them to me. Perhaps it was after he was ordained, but he mentioned studying this sutra. He said, I frequently study the Nirvana Sutra, but the concepts of permanence and impermanence mentioned therein are not entirely clear to me. I hope the Master will explain them. The Nirvana Sutra states that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, space is unconditioned, and Buddha nature is also unconditioned. Thus, they are permanent. The sutra discusses permanence and impermanence quite extensively. However, he didn't seem to grasp the underlying meaning, so he asked the Master for a brief explanation. Will he be able to understand a brief explanation? The Master said, that which is impermanent is Buddha nature. That which is permanent is the discriminating mind of all good and evil phenomena. The Master said, what is called impermanent is actually Buddha nature, the Tathagata Garbha. The Tathagata Garbha is what is impermanent, and what is called permanent are things like good, evil, our mind, and mental factors. These discriminating thoughts are what are permanent. At this point, the disciple was completely stunned. Wait, what? Actually, he probably understood the basic concepts. Sometimes people ask questions to test a teacher, not because they are truly ignorant. Often they ask about the very things they think they understand best. He said, Master, what you say directly contradicts the sutra text. Compassionate Master, what you are saying is the complete opposite of the Buddha's words. This is simply not logical. He had clearly done his homework as he read the Nirvana Sutra frequently. The Master said, I transmit the Buddha's mind seal. How would I dare contradict the sutras? The Sixth Patriarch said, I have received the transmission of the Buddha's mind and the blessing of his mind seal. I understand the Buddha's secret intent. How could I dare violate the profound meaning of the scriptures? There is no contradiction. My explanation is perfectly sound. The disciple said, "The sutra says Buddha nature is permanent, yet you say it is impermanent." Now the debate begins. He argued, the Nirvana Sutra explicitly states that the Tathagata Garbha and Buddha nature are permanent. But today, Master, you are claiming that they are impermanent. The sutra says all phenomena, good and evil, and even bodhicitta are impermanent. The Buddha taught that good, evil, bodhicitta, compassion, and kindness are all impermanent states. Yet, Master, you say they are permanent. But you just said that good, evil, and discriminating thoughts are all permanent. This is a total contradiction, and it only adds to my confusion. He said, to put it this way is definitely a contradiction. Didn't I just quote that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent? Space and Buddha nature are unconditioned, and therefore permanent. That is exactly what the original text of the Nirvana Sutra says. The sutra clearly states Buddha nature is unconditioned and permanent, while all other phenomena are impermanent. But your explanation is the exact opposite. I was already a little bit confused before. Now that you've said this, I'm even more bewildered. I don't know what to think. Maybe I shouldn't have asked at all. I am completely at a loss now. The master said, "Don't be so distressed, it's quite all right." The master said, "Long ago, I heard the nun Xingchang recite the Nirvana Sutra once. I explained it for her, and not a single word or meaning failed to match the sutra." The master referred back to an earlier event we discussed. He said, once, regarding this very Nirvana Sutra, there was a nun named Xingchang who was reading it aloud. After she finished, she still didn't understand the meaning. Even though I couldn't read the words, as she recited, I explained the meaning to her. He had learned it like that before. I explained it for her means he taught her based on her recitation. Not a single word or meaning failed to match the sutra. Back then, every single word and concept I spoke was in harmony with the sutra. Everything I said was perfectly aligned with the Buddha's intent. Even what I tell you now is no different. So, regarding what I told you today, that the Tathagata Garbha and Buddha nature are impermanent, while other phenomena are permanent, this teaching is also completely in line with the scripture. There is no error. When he said this, the disciple became even more confused. He said, "My understanding is shallow and ignorant. Please explain the details to me. My knowledge is indeed very limited, and my insight is quite dim. Master, please explain the hidden meaning and the full context to me in detail. Otherwise, as it stands, I simply cannot understand. Tathagata Garbha and Buddha nature are impermanent, while all good and evil are permanent. I'm afraid such an assertion might be considered illogical. Is it not true that the Tathagata Garbha is permanent? What do you think? Is Buddha nature permanent or impermanent? Permanent. So you think the Sixth Patriarch didn't understand? If it's permanent, does that mean the master was wrong? How is it different? What is this permanence relative to? Is it permanent or impermanent in the relative sense? When you say the Tathagata Garbha is permanent, do you mean relative permanence or absolute permanence? Is there anything truly permanent in the ultimate sense? In the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, is Buddha nature permanent in the ultimate or the relative sense? The third turning describes a permanence in the ultimate reality. What is the ultimate view of the third turning? All right, we will stop here for today. Please contemplate this once more. We will continue after the break.
Bandara Badma Sodargye Bandara Badma Sodargye Bandara Badma Sodargye